but it will come back eventually. I'll just go through the preliminaries first, and then we'll get on with the agenda item. The meeting this evening will be live streamed to the public. A recording of the public part of the meeting will be available on the council's website within 24 hours of the meeting. And then we get anybody on Teams, etc., don't need to do that. Members of the public are entitled to take photographs, film, audio, record and report on the public meetings in accordance with the openness of local government bodies, Regulation 2014. People may not, however, act in any way considered to be disruptive and may be asked to leave. Emergency evacuation procedure from the council chamber is turn left, follow the green emergency exit signs to the main town hall entrance and proceed to the assembly point in St George's Square. Any apologies for absence this evening?
Yes, Chair. Apologies from Councillor Ambier and also Councillor Bridgen.
Minutes of the previous meeting. Okay to sign those up. Any disclosure of interest this evening? I understand now when the item comes up. Urgent business, I'm not aware of any.
Chair.
Service issue. I'll just give a brief rundown on the procedure tonight. I'll ask David Hall, the planning officer, to introduce the report. And then I've got some people who've indicated their right to speak. Reverend Mike Jones, Peter Adams and Russell Cartwright. And I'll give you 5 minutes each to speak. And then I'll ask the applicants to present their case. And I'll get around 15 minutes. Will that be enough, or do you want any more? You're happy with that? Okay. So we'll go straight over to David Hall now. We will introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. There is an update on this item which has been provided in the update sheet. Since the circulation of the update sheet at the members' briefing on Friday, there were some points raised there which were on which clarification was sought. These relate to roads and noise. In the matter of roads, concern has been expressed about parking on private roads and how this can be controlled to ensure that the residents are not inconvenienced by such parking. There are powers under the highways regulations which the council can use to control parking on such roads by way of a CPZ, which can form part of the review which is already required. The second point related to noise. The dwellings to the south of Crawley Green Road are identified as a noise receptor in the ES chapter. Insofar as the music venue is concerned, this part of the application is in outline with all matters reserved, save for citing, for subsequent approval. Condition 15 on the main committee report requires an operational management plan which will address hours of operation and operational aspects of the music venue, which will include noise. More generally, the ES concluded only minor noise, effect non-significant, would occur on the dwellings in Crawley Green Road. There are conditions to address this point. There are also matters with consultees which are still outstanding, as mentioned in the update sheet, but these matters can be addressed by conditions. Turning now to the application. More specifically, the application relates to a detailed planning application for a 25,000 capacity football stadium, an outline application for 2,700 square meters of entertainment, music and conference venue, and an outline application for up to 12,000 square meters of hotel accommodation. This application has been brought to committee as it is a major application. If I could have the first slide, please. The application site is located in Luton Town Centre's northeast gateway, bounded to the north by the route of the Luton Dunstable guided busway and to the south by St Mary's Road. To the east is Church Road and to the west Crawley Green Road. If I could have the next slide, please. Members will be aware that the application site benefits from the grant of planning permission under reference 16.01.400, which as part of these proposals included commercial and residential development and the stadium. If I could have the next slide, please. A subsequent grant of planning permission under reference 20-01587 provided for the residential and commercial elements of the redevelopment, but excluding the stadium. If I could have the next slide, please. This is the application site wedged between the west and east residential elements to which I referred under application 20-01587. In addition, there have been further applications which have been submitted, most notably an application to undertake engineering works to move earth and create a development platform across the wider Power Court site, and an application for the realignment and opening up of the culverted River Lee with associated works to enable redevelopment for the stadium. If I could have the next slide, please. This slide provides the context for the development of the application site, which is situated in the middle of the two mixed-use residential sites. These uses include appropriate town centre uses, a health centre, retail community uses, food and drink establishments, which were permitted under the 2020 application reference. If I could have the next slide, please. This slide shows more specifically the location of the stadium footprint and those elements the subject of the outline application, namely at 1, which is the one at the top of the slide, the entertainment, music and conference venue, and 2, the one at the southern point, for the hotel. The extant 2016 planning permission made provision for both of these elements, and they are carried forward to this application. As set out in the report, save for citing, all other matters, which are appearance, landscaping, layout and scale, will be the subject of reserved matters application. Parameter plans providing details of maximum height, building parcels dimensions, primary and tertiary frontages servicing and plant within that, and public and pedestrians. If I could have the next slide. Moving on now to the stadium development. The design is covered in some detail in paragraphs 184 to 238 of the report. In this presentation, I propose to deal with the basic concept of the design. Next slide, please. From this slide, the evolution of the form of the stadium can be seen from the 4 unique stands with corner infills providing both active and working frontages. Next slide, please. This concept then evolves further, providing robust entry portals, corner pod stands, and a scale height and massing in concert with its surroundings. Finally, the halo, a feature of the 2016 application, is carried forward to the current proposals. If I could have the next slide, please. This slide and the one that follows it shows the resulting elevations. And you can see from the elevations that the normal boxy type appearance of a stadium is lost with the design of this, which breaks up the roof by introducing the pods at the various ends of the stadium. If I could have the next slide, please. That's the north and south stands, the one to which I just referred. The next slide, please. This slide shows the difference between the development proposals of 2016 and 2024, where it can be seen that as well as rotating the stadium 90 degrees, which reduces the frontage on St Mary's Road, the stadium has reduced in height when compared to the extant consented scheme. In conjunction with these changes, the height and mass of the halo has also been reduced. You can also see that it's less of a block, but it's broken up by the various elements of that elevation. The next slide, please. This slide shows in more detail the variation in height between the 2016 development and the current application. There is a variation of 9 meters between the extant consent and that now proposed. I could have the next slide, please. So this slide shows in more detail the function of the various levels. Shows the corner entry portal reveal, The general entrance, the pub, club shop, retail spaces and active frontages, hospitality lounges over 4 floors, 5 corner pod stands and 6 future commercial spaces. Next slide, please. This slide shows in sequence of the site's access arrangements, showing primary access, pedestrian routes, accessible routes through the precinct, stepped access, road crossings, and temporary road closures on match day. Accessibility through the east and west of the sites will be provided by condition 42. If I could have the next slide, please. Turning now to the River Lee. This slide indicates the historic route of the River Lee. At present, the river is predominantly culverted through the site and runs from west to east. This means that currently there are only very small and inaccessible sections of the river on the westernmost and east of the site, which are open, whilst other areas are fully culverted under the site. In the areas that are open, the river cannot be seen as the riverbed is situated 3 meters below ground level. The next slide, please. The approved 2016 proposal rerouted the River Lee to run along St Mary's Road. The proposal partially deculverted the river in 3 areas whilst integrating public realm along St Mary's Road, which would still have 2 lanes of traffic running alongside the river. The majority of the Power Court 2016 proposal would be on a podium, which would be raised about 6 meters off the ground. This was to facilitate access and parking under the stadium. The next slide, please. In 2016, if the 2016 application is pursued, then the levels prove a further constraint to opening up the River Lee parallel within the red line boundary, where the River Lee is 3 to 4 meters below the grade, which, if culverted, would create a deep river trench. As such, to facilitate amenity access, large banks and steps would be required, which would further limit the crowd movement and would create a barrier to the integration of Power Court to the wider town. If I could have the next slide, please. The 2020 application, which has been approved, will provide multi-deculverted sections to the west end of the site, whilst ensuring crowd control associated with the proposed stadium can be appropriately and safely managed. Rerouting the central section rather than keeping it culverted under the future stadium, this will ensure that the stadium can be delivered. The river culvert can be maintained sustainably through a new culverted route running along the edge of St Mary's Road around the stadium. The public realm proposals allow the river to be the focal point of the proposed plaza within the site, which is a significant design improvement from the existing consent. You could have the next slide, please. This application, to which I made reference earlier, is currently under consideration and provides details of the realignment of the River Lee. This application has the support of the Environment Agency, and we are awaiting their final conclusions, subject to the tweaking of minor technical data in terms of modelling. In order to ensure that the development takes place prior to the commencement of the stadium, a condition is imposed requiring the diversion to take place before commencement. If I could have the next slide, please. This slide indicates the resulting circulation space and connectivity with the immediately surrounding area and the consequent linkage with the town. The area immediately to the right hand is a circulation space, and you can see the importance of that space in terms of crowd control and crowd modelling. If I could have the next slide, please. So this slide shows how the arrangements of culverting the River Lee in front of the stadium actually links the stadium with the town and provides connectivity, which the 2016 consent would not. Members will see from the report that the main planning considerations are fully addressed in paragraph 87. The topic heads are set out on page 21 of the report. The report provides a detailed analysis of the development proposed, and it is not proposed to repeat these in this presentation. There are a number of matters which it is considered do need to be highlighted. These are as follows: heritage, biodiversity net gain, sustainability, public realm linkage, and the NPPF December 2024. The site is adjacent to St Mary's Church, a Grade 1 listed building, and it is also adjacent to the Platers Lee Conservation Area. These are heritage assets against which the development has to be assessed. The matter of the listed buildings has been considered in paragraphs 263 to 268, and both Beams and Historic England do not object to the development, considering that the proposal will result in less substantial harm to the setting of the listed building, St Mary's Church. The NPPF in paragraph 208, now paragraph 215 of the December version of the NPPF, states that where a development proposal will lead to less than substantial harm to the significance of a designated heritage asset, this harm should be weighed against the public benefits of the proposal. In relation to the Platers Lee Conservation Area, views of the stadium will be largely obscured by the approved development to the north of the stadium within the wider Power Court site. On this basis, it is considered that the proposed development will not harm the character of the conservation area. Section 66 of the Listed Buildings and Conservation Areas Act 1990 places a duty on the council to have regard to the desirability of preserving the building or its setting. Section 72 similarly places a duty on the council to have special regard to the desirability of preserving or enhancing the character or appearance of that conservation area. In this respect of this duty, it is emphasized that the harm caused in Section 66 and Section 72 have been given special regard. It is concluded that the benefits of the development will outweigh the harm for the reasons set out in the report. As such, the proposals accord with policy LLP1 and LLP30 in the local plan, as well as paragraph 215 of the NPPF. Biodiversity net gain. Under biodiversity net gain legislation, developers must prove 10% BNG on major planning application. This can be achieved in a number of ways, but developers are urged to follow the biodiversity gain hierarchy to reach the uplift amount set out in the planning practice guidance, being the 10%. This is done by enhancing and restoring biodiversity on the site. If developers cannot achieve all of their BNG on site, they can deliver through a mixture of on-site and off-site, either by off-site biodiversity gains on their own land outside the development site or by off-site diversity units on the market. If developers cannot achieve on-site or off-site BNG, they must buy statutory biodiversity credits from the government. This latter one should be the last resort. The applicant has followed the relevant BNG hierarchy to secure gains on site, off-site within the blue line land, and off-site through biodiversity units. It has been established that the blue line BNG units can be delivered on adjacent land, the east and the west elements. The delivery of this will be secured through a Section 106 obligation, as well as forming part of the BNG plan to be secured by condition. Appropriate units have also been identified in off-site habitat banks. This ensures various options for delivery. The units can be purchased once registered, allocating them to the development. On this basis, it is considered that the council that 10% BNG can be achieved on the site and that the relevant arrangements can be made prior to development commencing. Sustainability. Sustainability is addressed in paragraphs 239 to 42, and a condition has been imposed, condition 30, to ensure that the measures are in place to comply with policy LLP 37. Public realm linkage. The Power Court site, although one site, has been the subject of two separate planning applications as described above. It is important that the stadium development benefits from ease of access as set out in slide 18. On this basis, a condition has been imposed which requires public realm linkage through the east and west elements of the site to the stadium concourse. I mentioned the National Planning Policy Framework. A revised version of the NPPF was published on Wednesday last, and it has been viewed in the context of the application, and there are no matters which affect the proposals now before members. Conclusion. The application raises numerous planning issues for consideration and requires a difficult and complex evaluation of many impacts, both positive and negative. This assessment has taken into account relevant development plan policies, the NPPF, information in the environmental statement, and other information comprising material considerations. The weight to give to these matters is ultimately a decision for members. When considering this balance of impacts, it is highlighted that they must ensure they take account of the information submitted with the environmental statement and the further information submitted as part of the application process and comprised within, and in considering whether to grant planning permission for development which affects a listed building and conservation area and its setting. Members should have special regard to the desirability of preserving the building or its setting and any features of special architectural or historic interest which it possesses. The development would, therefore, in light of what's set out in the report, be in accordance with the policies which are set out in paragraph 55 of the report. Taking all these matters into account, balancing the social, environmental, and economic benefits of the developments against the residual harm, it is recommended that planning permission is granted.
Thanks, David. Any specific questions by members to the officer? Councillor Franks.
Yeah, only one at this stage, Chair. Thank you. I'm looking at paragraph 30, which is talking about, where are we? Public open spaces. It says for people to use on non-match days whilst functioning on match days. What does that mean?
Well, it means it's dual purpose. In other words, it will be able to be used as a communal plaza around the stadium by people who will be visiting the stadium, but it will also function as a circulation space on match days when people are going to the stadium to attend matches.
So it's a public open space through which some people may go on their way to a football match.
Well, it's public open space which can be used for circulation on non-match days and on match days.
Okay, I just thought your terminology made it more complicated than it needed to be.
Well, that's planning for you.
Thanks, Chair. I only have a couple of questions. One of them relates to the fact that the phasing of the development is such that the west and east residential master plan zones won't be coming forward at the same time as the stadium development. Therefore, we'll have large parcels of empty land sitting next to a fully functioning football stadium and the music venue. What safeguards have you considered to ensure that the empty parcels won't be used for match day and other parking? And would it not make sense to include a condition for planning obligations to restrict that area specifically?
Well, we have a situation, obviously, where we've got two sites on one site. And as far as the stadium is concerned, it's important to ensure that there is ready access from the sustainable transport locations at the station and the busway. So what we've done is we've imposed the condition to which I made reference, which will require that to come forward to ensure that when fans are attending games, they're not effectively walking across a ploughed field, because that would be the net effect of obviously there not being any public realm works. So the intention is that the public realm works will be available to provide access to the stadium. In terms of when the other parts of the site will come forward, there is a condition which requires groundworks to take place. In fact, in Section 106 agreement, there is a condition which requires the stadium to commence before the groundworks for the stadium before the residential schemes on the adjoining sites commence.
My second question relates to, so if we go to page 78 on the agenda, paragraph 309, it's the 5th bullet point.
So which paragraph?
78, paragraph 309, page 78, paragraph 309.
Got that?
You got it?
Yep.
Okay. So it says that the applicant is going to work with bus operators to increase frequency of buses in the busway during post and pre-match peak periods. But I can't see how this is achieved without a planning mechanism, such as an appropriate condition or planning obligation. Maybe would you be able to expand on how this intention will be secured?
Well, you'll see from the report that there are a number of requirements for example, for a public transport strategy to be submitted and to be approved by the council. There's travel demand strategy, there's traffic management strategies, and it's anticipated that these measures would be part included as far as some of the measures are concerned. But there are in the obligations contributions to be made or required in terms of, for example, public realm works, improvement to junctions, etc. So it would be addressed by a combination of the Section 106 agreement and conditions.
Thank you. That's all, Chair.
Yeah. Good evening, Chair, members, everyone. It's Sunny Sahajban, Interim Service Director for Sustainable Development. Your question, Councillor Khan, about the parcels of land either side of the stadium. The parcels of land in the future will come forward for residential development. But you're right, there will be a period where the stadium will be fully functioning and built. And in that interim period, there could be a possibility that on-street parking could be made available. And I think you're right. We might need to look at that to impose a condition or a Section 106 clause that prohibits that from happening. And I'm looking to Stephen to stick, because it sits in the outline element, not the red line element, but I'm sure we can include a clause in the 106 restricting that.
I think we need to have a planning condition placed, particularly to address that, because it is, as someone who lives in a residential area near the current stadium, I think it can be a nuisance for local residents. So I think if we are going to, I think we should definitely place a condition on that.
Yeah, I think if you could help me with this follow-up question is this kind of like where I've seen this around other stadiums where landowners offer cheap parking on vacant bits of land. So if that's a possibility, then I'm agreeing with Councillor Khan about people taking benefit of that, because as we've seen in other parts of the borough where people moan about parking congestion, they add to it by trying to making money from vacant bits of land. And so I think that's an important consideration, because go to any major stadium and you see these people offering free, cheap parking to take, to take advantage of these events. Because it's, on page 73 with the match day data you've got on, is it 277 about the percentage of fans coming by by a particular type of methods of transport. At the moment, it says 21.6% are coming by car. Ideally, further on, I would like to ask this from the applicant if we can bring that number down, because one of the things I like about the application at the moment one of the things it's nice about it is because you've got lots of public transport, so there's no need for people to be driving in because you've got 2 train stations, the bus interchange. So I think whatever can help to minimise the traffic impact, and also the officer talked about the heritage with the church. We've got to make sure that we preserve the town centre in terms of the environment and sustainability. So I would like that to be added, Chair. Thank you.
Can I just say something, Chair? I think that if we have a combination, as I mentioned, of parking strategies, and there are a number of measures to ensure that there is not, shall we say, random car parking. And I think the other point you make also about sustainability. The whole object of the stadium is to encourage sustainability. It's possibly for a stadium such as this, it's in probably one of the most sustainable locations that you'll find. And so since the 2016 application, things have moved on. So we're now in a position where we're trying to encourage people not to use cars, not to involve themselves in using public transport of one shape or form. And the options are there, which is why it's important that there is a link between the transport hubs from the station, from the busway onto the stadium. In terms of, shall we say, the random parking elsewhere, I mean, if they are on land, then they will require planning permission. But certainly, as far as the measures that are proposed and the strategies to which I made reference earlier, that there is an opportunity for this to be controlled by public transport strategy to encourage the use of public transport, and the traffic management strategy as well. So there are mechanisms there in order to be able to control this.
I think if anyone wanted to access the football ground and they lived in Dunstable, Houghton Regis, they must be mad, especially when you've got the busway, which will bring you there in 10 minutes. And I think it is a sustainable location, no doubt. Jakob.
Yeah, and I agree with you, because I think what I was trying to say is we should safeguard against anything that could undermine the sustainability. So that's what Margaret was, and the chair is absolutely right. One of the things that's going in favour of this stadium project is because of the public transport link. So you're absolutely right. There's absolutely no reason for somebody to drive, because you've got so many options of making your way to the stadium. And it was more about putting in safeguards so it doesn't undermine the sustainability, of this project. Thank you, Chair.
Any specific questions? There will be other opportunities. Okay, and we'll move on. Oh, Babatunde.
Thank you, Chair. Just want to ask about the around the flood authority. When exactly are you expecting to get a definite is it resolution or final observation concerning the flood they're looking into, the flood part, or if there's going to be any issue around there?
Well, we've endeavoured to determine this application as quickly as we have been able and as process allows us. There are a number of points which we need to need to be resolved, to which I made reference, in particular some of the consultation responses. An application of this size, they take a little time, but obviously we will continue to work with the applicant, as we have done so throughout this process, in order to be able to deliver a planning permission as quickly as we can.
Okay, no more questions at this stage, and I'll move on to the next phase, and that's the people have indicated their right to speak. And I've got, apart from the applicants, and I've got Reverend Mike Jones, Peter Adams, and Russell Cartwright. Got you down as objectors. I don't know if you clarify if you wish to object, or the O might mean observe observations. Do you want to come forward? And then you've got up to 5 minutes to make a representation.
Thank you, Chair. St Mary's Church serves thousands of Luton residents each year through worship, our community engagement and venue hire. I'm the Reverend Mike Jones and the Vicar of the church. The proposed stadium and the wider neighbourhood will be the church's immediate neighbour. St Mary's broadly welcomes the plan by 2020 Developments and Luton Town Football Club. The club has engaged closely with us since well before their plans were made public and several times over the summer. St Mary's Church has stood on the site for over 1,200 years, the present building for 900 years, and the church has been at the heart of the town's community through that time, and we do seek to continue in that tradition. We've seen and weathered many challenges and changes in the town and survived them. The development would give us a new stage and new opportunities, and we will seek to step up to them. All change brings both new opportunities and challenge and threat. We're seeking to think creatively about our building, and especially access and our own open spaces. We welcome the council club and wider town's involvement with us in that process. The church is steward of a magnificent 900-year-old medieval Grade 1 listed building, and the planning officer's report rightly notes the concern of historic England that the mass of the stadium would have considerable impact on the setting of the church, while concluding that it would do less than substantial harm. We ask all parties to closely monitor the progress of construction and the ongoing functioning of the stadium so that remains the case. However, the church is not just a historic building, but the hub of a living, worshipping community who themselves are as passionate about Luton as its regeneration as the club is. The proposed development will have considerable impact on the way we work. We've raised these in our submission and have subsequently had good initial conversations with the club. These concerns relate both to our worshipping community and the wider activity of the church, including considerable hiring of the main church hall and rooms. We welcome the inclusion of our concerns in the officer's report to the committee, paragraph 429. And we note that concerns from the construction phase will be addressed in the CEMP and look forward to active engagement with all concerned to make the aspiration of that document of a reality. Over this past year, constructors clearing the site have established clear relationships with the church office, and account has now been taken to consult with us when intrusive levels of noise are expected. We would ask that this relationship be implemented from the outset and remain priority in order that church offices, services and hirings are not hindered. Similarly, we look forward to active engagement with club and local authority insofar as our concerns are addressed in the stadium management plan and crowd management strategies, and in the regular process of engagement through the promised neighbourhood liaison group, which will ensure that close neighbours are aware of events and can communicate issues experienced directly with the club. Now, the church is part of what is termed the X zone. Now, the most obvious impact on the church will be its churchyard on match and other events. In order to make the churchyards both safe and attractive for the thousands in the area, we will be needing to carry out considerable work with consequent financial investment. We would note that as a closed churchyard, while the church continues to own it and use it and be the decision maker in the future of it, and importantly ensure its design is fit for purpose, the council has responsibility for maintaining the area. We do not note today any reference to this in the officer's report and recommendations, and ask that the council, club and ourselves meet as soon as possible to look at the way forward, including the financial implications. It's a substantial area. None of the above concerns should distract from our overall support, and we join ourselves to the planner's recommendation that the proposed stadium will have overall community benefits and assist in its regeneration to the benefit of the community. We trust that the decision of the committee is positive and look forward to a future with Luton Town as neighbours. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay. Peter? Oh, are there any questions to Peter Jones? Oh, you got away with it. Peter, do you want to come forward? Oh, you're going to say exactly the same thing. Oh, thanks for saving us the bother then. Jakob?
Yeah, sorry, I did have a question. So part of the section 106 one, I think it's the one page 19 where all that's been itemized. Hopefully somebody in this room can help me. Sorry, have you guys been reassured or felt reassured that there is £700,000 set aside for St Mary's Road, improvements to St Mary's Road, and there's an additional £700,000 for the St Mary's Road and roundabout improved contribution? Would that, or is some of that going to help with what the church needs in terms of safeguarding their site and their heritage? Is there somebody that can help us with that query?
Well, there is within the obligations fund set aside, but however, we're quite heavily regulated in terms of what this money's and what contributions can go to under Reg 122 of SIL. So it's got to be necessary to make the development acceptable in planning terms, directly related to the development, and fairly and reasonably related in scale and kind to the development. So in considering the application, we looked at the application in the context of where there was a need for SIL to mitigate. That was where the funds are required, and they're mainly, as you'll have seen from the narrative, related to highway matters, to improve highway matters, to ensure that the impact of the stadium can be mitigated in highway terms. So in terms of allocating money to other well-deserved causes, we would have to have regard to what it said in SIL. And I think in this context, it would have to relate to the development per se, rather than any other off-site works, which one would have to consider whether they were reasonably necessary to ensure the development could take place.
I think we recognise this and don't want to slow it down. And I think we would probably turn to you as our ward councillor, Councillor Hanif, with a view to, representing us in discussions within the council. And obviously we have had a lot of discussion with the club, so we don't want this to slow things down. But at the same time, we are very keen to present the church as part of the overall town centre in a way that integrates, brings everything it can to the development, and therefore we would like to the issues to go forward. But as I say, we don't want to slow things down. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, Pete. That was never my intention. I think we're going to be in a wonderful situation where we could potentially have a world-class stadium next to a world-class heritage site. So I think it's just about, I think tonight is the night where we ask these questions and get them out of the way, because we would just, like yourself, we want to move ahead with, something which could and will, benefit the town. So it's more about asking these questions tonight instead of just having them lingering. So it's just more a matter of clarification and, help to address some of your concerns and trying to move forward. Thank you, Chair.
With permission, Chair, just to clarify for us, it's the while there's transport issues, it's that for us it's the physical walking to the stadium issue that we can see injury in through our churchyard. So there's that physical reality. Just to clarify what I was bringing there.
I understand that the church want to be part of the community with the football club as well. The only thing that comes to mind is that the football club don't normally have control over the fixture list and the timings. I mean, I don't agree with, Friday night football, Saturday night, Monday night. And you might have a carol concert on a Friday evening and the couple say, oh, we've got a big football match on that Friday at the same time. And that is the conflict. But I'm sure you get around it. No more for questions. Russell Carroll. Oh, Francis.
Sorry, I haven't quite got away with it. Can you just explain a little more the issue you've got with the graveyard, please?
Yeah, so we're immediately adjacent to the stadium. So obviously people will walk to the stadium. So currently our churchyard is adequate if 5 people walk through it because there's pathways. But like if I go to a rugby match or a football match, you just walk through. Therefore, in the X zone, the responsibility of whoever's responsibility it is for the external zone of a football stadium to be made safe post Hillsborough. So therefore, there is the responsibility for the external zone around the stadium for it to remain safe. So we fully agree that the need for transport arrangements, but you've also got one of the problems with being a vicar is we get sued if someone slips on a wet gravestone, let alone if someone gets injured walking through the churchyard. And what there is for the local authority is the local authority is responsible for the maintenance and the payment of a closed churchyard. So that's one thing for the councillors to be aware of, is that actually there is that joint responsibility. And so if there is an incident that happens, it will come under the local authority, as I understand it, not simply the church. So we don't want to slow it down, but we want to point out that use of that money shouldn't simply be thought of vehicular transport, but also pedestrian transport and movement to the stadium.
Francis?
So what sort of solution do you have in mind?
We have an architect. We would first need to look at the stakeholders in what we're looking to do, and then we would have to do a risk assessment of according to the statutory regulations that come. We would have to do a risk assessment and assess the grounds, the walkthrough, and then what then needs to be actioned for it to be made safe for a match day.
Is this actually now a planning issue, or? Going to answer that,
Chris from Highway.
I'm not entirely sure how much of the routes through the graveyard are highway, so it might be a joint highways planning issue. We may need to look into that from a legal point of view, what the situation is and where we stand from a point of view of it being highway. And I have to say, as I sit here tonight, it's not a question I was expecting, and I'm not sure of the status of some or all of the routes through there.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think it sounds to me this is a debate for another day, because I think it may be a separate issue that we have to address, not as part of this application, but as a separate side issue, because yes, I think we can meet afterwards and then talk about it and address it another date.
If planning permission is granted, there will be issues that will come to light We don't know what they are yet, and they would need to be resolved. It happens with all new stadiums. I'm sure it happens all over the country, with new stadiums. You don't know what the issues are until they're up and running. Yeah.
It might be helpful could you get slide 18 up on the screen, please? Because that slide shows the circulation, anticipated circulation. You got it? Yeah, so if you can make it slightly larger. No. Okay, so the circulation areas which are shown on that plan don't show the churchyard. I appreciate that the churchyard may be used, but the circulation lines that are shown are on Church Street, in front along St Mary's Road, and through the other various areas. So it's not shown as an accessibility route. Appreciate it might be an informal route, and that's something to consider. But as it stands at the moment, that demonstrates what the accessibility of the stadium would be. I don't know whether that's helpful.
Okay. Does the meeting give you a question?
Thank you, Chair. Of the two railway stations, which one do you see the fans getting off at, Station Road or Parkway?
I know.
Or do they just get off where they think is the right one?
Well, I think this may be subject of in terms of how the stadium operates, may be a matter for the stadium management plan. But there have been discussions that the majority of fans would come to the main station, with others using the Parkway, where I think there was talk of shuttle buses. But as I said, this is all to be covered in the stadium management plan.
If you're going to say Station Road is going to be one of the main ones, can we consider a footbridge over Church Street rather than having the fans stream across the bottom end of Hitchin Road?
I'll be honest, that probably isn't viable, because my experience of footbridges is that fans will still stream across the road and not take the longer route over the bridge. But we will have pedestrian management strategies in place to manage that period post-match in particular. So,
okay, we seem to be getting a big bogged down. Can you do the last one then, because we got to move on. We're getting bogged down at the moment.
So I sorry, Chair, but I don't think that footbridge is a good idea for a safety point of view, because having that many fans going across a footbridge, I think the existing plans are good enough as they are, Chair. Thank you.
Revealed in good time. Now, Russell, are you still with us? I'm asking you to come forward and make your statement.
Thank you, Chair. Russell Cartwright. At the outset, I would like to emphasise that I'm not objecting to the whole application, only to one small but specific aspect of it. Although I can't claim to be an active Luton Town fan, I welcome their successes and the enhanced community cohesion that this brings to the town. And I was born and brought up in Avondale Road, so I'm quite familiar with how the club operates on match days, at least. But at the same time, the natural environment also brings much to enjoy about our increasingly urban area, and needs to be cherished, particularly since it is a scarce resource within the borough boundary. My specific objection is to the retention of the culverting of the stretch of the river when it is diverted, rather than designing an open river. The original plan showed the river as being open when it flowed through the site. Now only part of the realigned river is deculverted. Strictly speaking, this aspect is for a different application, 240042 0, but I hope the club will take my comments on board. Keeping the river open will enhance the Upper Lee Valley Walk at this point. It will help soften the transition of the view from the Grade 1 listed building of the church to the modern stadium. And actually that is a greater worry now that the alignment of the stadium has changed so that the nearest point of the stadium to the church is less than it was under the original plans. Maybe that I'm speaking to the gallery in this respect, that of the applicant, the club, with my comments if the committee does not have the powers to insist on full deculverting. Although I note they can stipulate something like the number of games played at the stadium. The committee and the club should have the backing of the Environment Agency, so it is disappointing that they have not been more forthcoming in their own response. Among other things in the Environment Agency policy, they state that the detrimental effects of culverting include the increased risk of flooding, while the benefits of not culverting include providing habitat for wildlife and improving its connectivity. It can't be right that with the biggest development in the town centre since the shopping centre, the opportunity is lost to restore the river to its pre-Victorian appearance. By full deculverting, the club will be able to increase its environmental sustainability credentials with the public of Luton. I would urge the club to adopt this small amendment to their plans. It can't be beyond an engineering solution to incorporate crowd safety into deculverting for the 30 or so days, including the concerts, that this will be needed to be paramount. We already have railings alongside the Mill Race section of the river on the east side of New Bedford Road, directly above the river channel, so a variant of this could be used where safety is a priority, with sufficient footbridges to suit maximum crowd capacity. I appreciate that a fully tiered banking solution like that at Hat Gardens won't be possible from a safety perspective at this point. But I don't envisage the river creating a barrier to access to the stadium. It would need the footbridges. Deculverting may also incorporate a cost saving over a full reculverting to the project. I hope the club will take these comments on their proposal on board. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks for that. Excuse me. I think the culverts were covered in the report, right, David?
Yes, I went into some detail in the slides and the presentation about the River Lee and the deculverting of the River Lee, and I explained that the stadium in the 2016 application was broadside on, as it were, and the culverting went along, or the deculverting went along the front. The difference in distance, the 2016 application had 167 metres of unculverted River Lee. The current proposal, since it relates to the 2020 application, is 125 metres. So there is a difference. But I think the point that I was endeavouring to make was that in terms of the linkage and connectivity with the town, that the arrangement proposed with the current application is preferable in that respects. I understand all the arguments on the environment, and whilst it would be in an ideal world helpful to have the whole of it unculverted, it's not practical, and the application that you have in front of you to deal with shows that the River Lee would be culverted in the section where it relates to the stadium.
Okay, questions, Steve? Question? So, questions, Steve? Not with you.
Yeah, the guy just spoke. Any other questions?
Russell, did you have another question?
Sorry, you speaking to me?
Yeah.
I didn't. Well, no, I wasn't sure that was a question to me either.
Well, yeah, it was
an
a
opinion,
response.
which I disagree with.
It was a response to your statement. Yeah, Jakob.
Yeah. Well, given the age of the town, I think the River Lee and the way Mother Nature has placed it has always been a barrier. But I'm happy with the proposal in the original report to address the River Lee, and I think I would prefer to stick with what's in the report in terms of as the officer has explained it, because there's no easy way around it. And I think to mitigate some of that, we've got the pocket park in the town centre. So there is something being done, but Chair, for what it's worth, I believe we should stick to what's been proposed in the report. Thank you.
I think the majority of members are happy with the layout, the modified layout as regards the removal of the culverting. Okay, we'll move on now. Can I ask the applicants to come forward, please, and present your case? If you've heard some of the questions and comments, you can, if you wish, to comment on those as well, for clarification, if you need to. There's no compulsion to.
No, we'd be very keen to answer whatever we can afterwards, if that's okay. So, if I may begin, so thank you for the opportunity to speak before you this evening. My name is Michael Moran. I'm Chief Operating Officer of 2020 Developments. My colleague Gary Sweet will speak in a moment. As has been set out by the Planning Officer, we've got a hybrid planning application in front of us. Seeks detailed planning consent for a stadium for the club, outline consent for a music venue and hotel. The proposed development will sit alongside the consent for the residential elements on the east and the west of the site, for which planning permission was granted in 2022. Together, the proposals will transform the site, the town, and the prospects for the club. A new stadium has been an aspiration for Luton Town Football Club for generations, and our journey to this committee tonight started back in 2016 when we submitted the application, or original application. Clearly, a huge amount has happened in that time, but we've remained fully committed to delivering on this goal of a new stadium and, in turn, freeing up Kenilworth Road. We never thought it would be easy, to be clear. Power Court is a challenging site, and that's the reason it's been derelict for so many decades now. Dealing with the culvert, dealing with contamination, and the need to move a UK Power Network substation. However, since outline consent was granted in 2019, we have been very busy. As of today, many of you will be aware that there is a new substation being built in the corner of Power Court. This will enable the existing substation to be demolished next year. Preliminary groundworks are well underway, and I'm pleased to say that the levels of earth being removed from site is well below the numbers indicated in the planning approval that this committee kindly consented earlier this year. In so doing, we are being both considerate of our local environment, because that's what we should do, but also we're de-risking the site going forward for our main contractor and for future finance partners. We've also been in detailed and lengthy conversations with the Environment Agency, and I'm very happy to discuss the River Lee. We understand the comments that have been posed. We deal with the river and will be dealt with properly in a separate application, but I'm happy to try and acknowledge it now, that put simply, the diversion of the river is absolutely necessary to fit a stadium on the site. The previous image being referred to was a different application. And what we have done now with Power Court is we've explored how much maximum feasible that the river can be opened up. But we have to be conscious of crowd modelling. There has to be safe egress and access in and out of the stadium. There are other site constraints that we've got to deal with. And I think sometimes it's really important to be really clear with what we want to achieve. We want Power Court to be an integral part of the town centre. So in no way, shape, or is it possible to have that river opened up through St Mary's Road and still facilitate that kind of interchangeability of the two sites. But perhaps more importantly, we're creating a new public realm for hopefully 1,200 apartments and commercial units. But we want to make a feature of that area. And how better to do that with dealing with the river that's there already? It almost seems sacrilegious to move a river that's there in the first place. And as has been discussed, we'll be opening up 125 metres of river as a minimum. We're continually talking to the Environment Agency. It's a long process. So there is hopefully further news to come of more river to be opened up, but it's a minimum of 125 metres, and that compares to currently 0, in effect. I'm very happy to touch on St Mary's Church. We've been meeting with the Reverend Jones and Peter Adams for many years now. And I think we all recognise that it's a great opportunity, but it's one that will require further collaboration and discussion on those match day issues. But I think it's important not to lose sight the fact that the match day for an hour and a half, a couple of hours is only a fraction of what is an important week. And I think there are many opportunities for us to work together. Again, we can happily talk about answers to some of the transport questions in due course, but fundamentally it's intended to be a public transport orientated stadium, and that's how we're working to achieve. And finally, again, as we're here so many years ago now, but we have submitted a very detailed planning application with all of those environmental documents in place. So the technical background to this work is there for all to see. It's probably best now for me to hand over to Gary.
Yeah, good evening, Chair, council members and officers of the council, and everybody else, of course. Actually, for those that don't know me, I'm Gary Sweet. I've been Chief Executive of Luton Town Football Club since 2008, and tonight I'm representing the board of the club and the development company with respect to this application. As many of you know from the outset, we at the club have sought to locate our new home at the very heart of Luton Town Centre and the town it proudly represents, so it can be a focal point for the wider community and to accelerate our town centre's regeneration, as opposed to taking a vital community anchor out to the fringes of the town, like has happened at so many other clubs over the last couple of decades, to their detriment, I must say. We've also been adamant that the design of our new stadium carries so many of the unique characteristics of Kenilworth Road. This enables the club to keep its distinctive identity and helps our supporters maintain a strong familiarity with their new environment while creating a bigger, more modern, more iconic architectural centrepiece for both the club and the town. I'd like to highlight some of those characteristics we're taking from Kenilworth Road into Power Court to achieve this. 4 unique stands, all close to the pitch, an offset players' tunnel, terrace pods that hover over the corner flags, a unique roof structure to create the best acoustics, and a good capacity of safe standing behind one goal along one side. All of these features are, of course, have created the unique identity of Kenilworth Road, of our old stadium, and will also shape and define the new. To top it off, literally, we'll also build a totally unique floodlight structure that not only will provide an excellent illumination to the pitch, but will also act as an architectural masterpiece representing a ribbon around our hat, or a halo as it's been commonly known. And this will be seen from railway station and the many travellers that pass that site. The main stadium functions of player and staff accommodation, hospitality and banqueting will be located in the by the newly exposed river in the West Stand. The working components of the stadium will mostly be hidden within the northern area, and then externally allows active frontages to street level on 3 sides of the stadium through the introduction of commercial and retail uses. This includes the club's own amenities, which, other than a retail shop and ticket office, will even include a community hub, museum, and reception, all aligned with the River Lee, flowing into the players' tunnel. In addition to the club's own facilities, there will be ample accommodation for everyday commercial usage for appropriate tenants to activate. This is our new home for generations, and the materials to be used will be so high quality. It will respect the importance of the stadium's location in proximity to St Mary's Church and will strike the right balance of tone between refinement and pride. The last season, despite all odds, the club proved that the seemingly impossible was indeed possible by getting the smallest stadium ever into the Premier League. In order to repeat this and to maintain a position at the top table of English football, we need a new, bigger, better stadium that brings us up to date, gives us greater pride, enables us to create, be more competitive, and attracts better players. The wider benefits of Premier League action to Luton as a town are so far-reaching that everyone benefits, particularly economically, forgive me, but also from a sense of pride, well-being, and social harmony. All of these benefits were evident last season, and many have continued. The delivery of this stadium has been long in the making. It's always been about delivering something we can be proud of, to elevate the club and town together, and to guarantee the long-term sustainability of our football club. We're thankful to the members for hearing our application and trust you to make the right decision for all. It will be a vital milestone passed on to our journey. The next milestone will be breaking ground to begin construction next year to have a new home ready by 2027. Thank you.
Questions by members to the applicant, either to Michael or to Gary. Alia.
Thanks, Chair. Thank you so much for presenting your case. Now, I think assurances against excessive match day traffic is crucial for the town, as you will be aware. And currently, the severe congestion causes from the existing stadium use are a clear example of that. And I think, to enhance the profile and the sustainable transport modes as much as possible, as we've been discussing at length earlier, would be crucial to that. And I think in that we kind of have to be a bit innovative as well. So would there be a consideration for the club to put out sort of real-time travel guides as big as the scoreboard so that it makes it easier for travellers to use sustainable modes of transport, and that we're not relying on cars as much? Because to my knowledge, I've not seen it in any other stadiums or any other sports grounds, and I think we'd be quite pioneering if we were to be able to bring that in the town.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. We'll consider anything, frankly. Essentially, the reason why we've chosen this site is not just to put the stadium right in the heart of Luton Town Centre and for the benefit of the community, but also because of its sustainable transport links, not just for the busway and for the two railway stations, and of course we have the airport, but also it actually draws in many more walking supporters. Our season ticket holders, many of those live on the other side of town and can access Power Court more easily than Kenilworth Road, in fact. But the other point as well that I'd like to make is what we're doing is taking some of the transportation and travel constraints out of the system where we are in Bury Park, and relocating them. And we're very, very confident that actually, so we are increasing the capacity, of course, but actually a large majority of that increase we are going to be persuading to come via public transport or by foot or cycle. And in fact, communication, as you've rightly pointed out, is a vital part of that. Our experience last year taught us an awful lot in our promotion to Premier League, and the way we managed that project of the Bobber Stand, and with all the media inquiries and media sort of trucks and everything that arrived on match day, we had to communicate very well. It didn't make everybody happy, but 95% I think were. So we've got some good experience with that, and obviously to make sure that our supporters are educated in how they attend football, and there's a lot of strategies that we can use for that, but we'll certainly consider everything.
Thank you. I have a couple more questions, if that's okay, Chair. Thank you for that, and I do hope you consider and actually implement it. The second question relates to sort of social value and adding, social value to the town. And I think a key part of that is for community and voluntary groups to be able to make use of facilities that are available. And in particular, I wondered whether there'd be a community agreement for the music venue in particular.
The music venue for tonight is a subject to an outline application, and so the detail will come later in that. But certainly one of the things we recognise Luton is strong is its talent in music. One of the reasons why we are very keen on that happening. I think the experience we all had at Big Weekend last, or actually this year, wasn't it? Actually, earlier this year was an opener for everybody, and really most enjoyable. And I think we'd love to be able to bring a little bit more of that, maybe on a smaller scale, to Luton more frequently. I think there are going to be plenty of opportunities for local artists to perform with or without the music venue. I mean, we want to encourage that, and when we look at the music venue a little bit more in more detail, we'll certainly put some kind of plan together. Hope that answers your question.
Thank you. And now moving on to the question we've been talking about a lot, which is the River Lee. So I noticed that the previous planning consent granted permission for the development that would open up the Lee, and I know that we're making, a lot of concessions, I suppose, but I noticed that the current proposal has gone retrograde to the previous offer and now hides the Lee away from public gaze much more significantly than it had envisaged in the previous application. So it's great to see that it's still considered within that, but actually I've noticed that it's a little bit away from the actual gaze. So to me, it's sort of like that was the original agreement and now it's changed. So it's like it's a classic case of developers sort of don't want to be too pedantic, but it's playing the planning system a little bit. And, there are a lot of promises are being made. And I think I have a worry that actually there'll be no intention of implementing that, which happens. I'm not saying it will happen in this case, but what assurances can you give me that actually you will keep to this plan, essentially?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Khan. It's a good comment, and I also welcome Russell's objection, actually, because I there's a part of me that agrees with everything. Ultimately, what we're set out to do here is to open up as much of the River Lee as we possibly can. And that it's not a financial constraint here. We are, the objective to our engineers and our architects is to open up as much as possible of the River Lee as we can. And that is still ongoing. So that is the first point. I think the relocation of where the River Lee is then exposed, I think, is a far better location than it was in the previous plan, and it doesn't have the constraints that the previous plan had. It actually, what it effectively does is enables, because it's a pedestrian area, predominantly enables pedestrians, are the people of Luton, to access the river much more easily. So from a strategic point of view, from the football club, our objective is to open it up as much as possible. But I know Mike wants to say a couple of things.
Yeah, no, I think the way to answer this is we're not comparing apples with apples. So the original scheme envisaged, if you could imagine, the entire Power Court site on a podium with effectively car parking underneath, and this public area and the bases of the residential towers, a couple of stories up in the air. And then as a consequence of that, the whole river was then moved down St Mary's Road. That was a completely different design, different idea. What we're doing now, if anything, is kind of simplifying things, focusing on two things, focusing on, as I said earlier, really trying to integrate Power Court with the rest of the town. Because, literally, that was 2015, that was 2016, those designs, that's a very long time ago. And what we thought was the best idea then, to be honest, helped through the years that we've had to consider this, is we think we've improved and evolved the design. So now if you're walking from the churchyard and the town centre, you'll walk at grade into an open public realm with the river in its natural position opened up. And I think, again, just to echo kind of what Gary said just at the end there, I think it's we couldn't have been tasking the consultant team with more ambition to open up as much as possible. And the desire, the vision for the stadium is absolutely contingent on that river being part of the wider site.
And just to add one more thing, actually, what we're now doing is effectively, so the parcels of land that you recognised earlier to either side of the stadium for residential, we're now redesigning that master plan, and effectively what we're doing is designing that around the river. it's such an important part of our town. I mean, the name of Luton is after that River Lee, and it's so much history and heritage that belongs between ourselves and the town and that river. So it's such an important part of what's coming forward. So some of those images and designs will be coming forward over the next few days, and I'm sure you'll see them and understand where we're coming from on that.
Thank you for that. This is not a question, but rather a comment. I think it's positive. Can I just I'd just like to conclude on my questions, if that's okay. Yeah. I just, maybe lose my train of thought now. That's fine.
Thank you, Chair. For the record, I'm happy with the proposal for the river, but coming back to public transport, what do you plan to do to engage with the fan base to encourage them to use public transport? Because one of the things about this site is that there's an abundance of public transport options. So what plans would you have to engage with the fan base, existing season ticket holders and the new season ticket holders with increased capacity, about encouraging them to use public transport? Because I live near Icknield High School, and I've seen fans walking from there. So currently the existing fan base, they love to walk. In fact, one of the previous mayors, who was in a wheelchair, Michael Dolling, he gets pushed along New Bedford Road. It's a beautiful site. So a lot of our fans are walking at the moment, but with the increase in capacity, there's a temptation to drive. So what will you do to tell the future fans coming to the new stadium to use public transport and leave their cars well away from the town centre?
If I start just by answering that sort of when we first engaged in considering Power Court, the transport consultants almost couldn't believe their luck, because human behaviour is one of looking for the path of least resistance, and generally we're lazy and we'll go for what's the easiest option. And moving the stadium from probably the most complex site that it could be into a site adjacent to two railway stations and a busway, and almost with that, I wouldn't sort of make it quite so categoric, but almost by not doing anything, the public transport is so apparent and so visible. So working through that travel plan, that's going to be key. The travel plan, there's hundreds of pages of details and commitments to work through over the coming years. So I guess that's all the statutory work that any club will do. But clearly, Luton does aspire to be different.
Yeah, I'd just like to apologise on behalf of Michael for causing our supporters lazy and taking an easy option. It's probably right. Look, we've got a highly engaged supporter base. When we do any kind of education with our supporter base, I still call it education. It's a persuasion of how to travel or behave. Then they're highly responsive. So far, I think our experience from last year, it meant that supporters had to change behaviour quite a lot about how they access the stadium at Kenilworth Road. And whilst it was a smaller scale, I think it proved to be very successful. And within 2 or 3 games, all these issues were ironed out. We are pretty good, at that kind of education. I think that what the travel plan will do is enable us to effectively communicate with supporters at that time. Particularly, you mentioned disabled supporters, for example. There will be some parking on site for disabled supporters, Councillor Hanif. So we are also considering that as a direct access. Well, it will be in there, but I think this will come out within that travel plan. So we're very confident that actually, if you think that the challenges that Kenilworth Road provide in terms of travel versus the challenges that we're facing, I think everyone at the club is involved in that process. I'm rather looking forward to the new challenge, because that in some ways is going to be a lazy option too. If that makes sense.
Councillor Glyde-Mead.
Thank you, Chair. On the subject of wheelchair access, etc., you mention in the report At level 2 on the east stand, upper tier concourse and full length wheelchair accessible viewing platform. To the south of the stand, stairways connect from the combined lower concourse to the upper tier. Will there be lifts for the wheelchairs to get up onto this second level?
Yes, there will be. Or there'll be areas of the stadium where disabled supporters with wheelchairs won't necessarily need lifts, but where there is a need for lifts, certainly there'll be certainly disabled lifts for those supporters. We've got a duty and a responsibility to provide that. We're following. Well, first of all, we started to consult with our Luton Town Disabled Supporters Association firstly, but also level playing field with all of those plans who are quite happy with everything so far.
Can we ask that the lift will be able to take at least half a dozen wheelchairs at a time? Otherwise, we're going to spend half the match getting people up onto this second level.
I'm probably going to defer the answer to that to another day if that's possible. But I'm not. I can't answer the question. I don't know whether that is planned. But there certainly are lifts. I don't think we have that many disabled supporters that we with wheelchairs currently that we can't accommodate with the new positions that we're going to have at Power Court. Those calculations will certainly be done, and that plan for disability access will be quite meticulous.
Yeah, it's also good to see that there is blue badge parking for disabled supporters, and it's good that they are included and that they can access the football stadium, which is very, very important. Any further questions to the applicant? Alia, did you say you had a question?
Just that I think it's a positive application. I'm quite happy that so a lot of the introduction of a lot of the considerations that have been made in terms of the travel, in terms of how it grows the town. So I think generally I'm quite supportive of this, and I would encourage my colleagues to be quite supportive of this tonight.
So, excuse me, Chair, if I may, it's not quite a direct question, but if I could take the opportunity to just respond to Councillor Khan, just in terms of the comments that you talked about, those interim uses, because I just really wanted to assure the committee that's something that we're thinking of, very significantly ourselves. Because for us, it's not just the stadium, but we're trying to build a perception of a high quality wider area. And so having parking lots of £2 a day or something, it's not going to do that. And I think there's also the trying to set a storyline for what we want to achieve on that site as a living, breathing part of the town centre. So I think, notwithstanding that any such applications would of course be subject to planning regulations and planning laws, but from a developer concept, we've got higher ambitions than that. I just wanted to assure you on that.
Any further questions to the applicants? There being no further questions, then thank you very much. So we'll go on to comments by members on the application. Any comments? Jakob.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think not only as a resident, but as a supporter of the club, I think it's finally good to see that we're nearly there. And I'm satisfied with the comments made to reassure maintaining the integrity of the church and the church activity and the heritage of the site. And I think those concerns for me have been addressed, as well as the River Lee. I think it's going to be hopefully a proud moment for the history of the town tonight when we finally give the green light and get the stadium that the town deserves, so that it brings in much needed investment and encourage more. Improve the image of the town, so it'd be good to see it finally happen. Thank you, Chair.
Any further comments? Councillor Franks.
I think there are two aspects of this development which really strike me. One is, yes, it's going to bring back into use an area of the town centre which has been not just derelict, but an eyesore and a pain in the ear hole for many, many years. But the other aspect is, of course, a massive improvement in the environment in Berry Park, where on match days at the moment, life is an absolute dreadful mess for the people who live there and people who are trying to travel through it. So there are two massive improvements on offer for me, and I'm quite happy to put my hand up and support both of them. Yes, I would have liked to have seen more of the river opened up, but okay, we're getting more on this plan than we got on the previous ones, and that's a welcome. Yeah, I think that's all I need to say. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, I think we're almost there, aren't we? Unless there are any further. Oh, Councillor Mead.
Thank you, Chair. Just carrying on from what Councillor Franks was saying about Berry Park area, moving on from the stadium at Power Cork and thinking about the stadium in Berry Park, can we ask that it be at least some of it be open ground, park ground for the community in Berry Park, because it's sadly lacking any real park facilities, and we should be thinking ahead to what we do with that site, because it is owned by the council, and I think no doubt Councillor Shaw will want to build all over it, but we should resist that, and we should leave some of it at least open to public open space.
Yeah, that's not within our remit tonight, but I'll take on board. And there have been plans in the past for a mixed-use development of housing and open space, but that remains to be seen. Francis.
Yes, Chair, I was just going to repeat what you've just said. It's not in front of us today. What happens to the old stadium?
Okay, Jakob.
I think if Councillor Mead would like to see what could be done, if you look at what they did with Main Road and when that moved, so you can get a really good idea of what could happen. But again, as you said, Chair, that's a debate for another day.
We can pedestrianise that part of Dunstable Road to make it better for pedestrians. Okay, there being no further comments, then the resolution is to approve. I'll move approval.
Seconded, Chair.
And then we'll go to the vote. Yes, please. Yeah.
Thank you, Chairman. Apologies, Councillor Jazali, you left the meeting for some time, didn't you?
Yeah, I left the meeting briefly as I'm a deputy mayor role to.
Okay, well,
speech.
my advice on that then is because you haven't been privy to the entire debate and questions and representations, you shouldn't vote on the item.
If you weren't here for the whole of the meeting, then it's the safest option is to not vote at all, because it's on actually YouTube, it's on television, and people may question the decision if they found that you've left the meeting. So I think the legal advice is that you don't vote.
Legal advice. Okay, I'll just want it on record because I'll comment probably during the comments to say, of course, it's an honor of my life to be here today. I would really have traded it for anything else, because I have to deliver that speech quickly, and that's why I'm back in here. But for the record purpose, I'll stay out of it.
And but the actual case law is that you have to be here for the whole of the meeting. It maybe it's a mistake on your part, but you just can't come in and out again. So the advice is that you do take part in the vote. Okay. So, Matt.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Farouk.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Franks.
For.
Councillor Haniff.
For.
Councillor Khan.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Mead.
For.
Councillor Steer.
For.
Councillor Taylor.
4.
That's carried, Chair.
So the decision is that the application, the 2020 application for the football stadium and associated development, planning permission has been granted.